Hello, welcome to Planetary Evolution, a space to discuss our path to peace and consciousness. I'm your host, Jared Angaza. Wow, the headlines are crazy. I'm getting revved up. It's hard to concentrate. There's a lot going on, but I think we've got to talk about it. Let's talk about Made in America. What does that mean? I watched a film years ago by Stacy Peralta called Bloods and Crips, Made in America. Amazing film. It talks about how the black community, as we say, and all the dynamics associated with that, mostly negative, with the more blacks being in prison, in the prison system, or on welfare, and so on. All the things that you think about, the stereotypes. And what he does is he breaks that down and comes back at the end and says, look, we made this. This is made in America. And after seeing that film many years ago, I think it was in Rwanda actually when I watched it, I've noticed that trend throughout. When we look at the headlines, think about, we have, I made a list here and I'm looking at my computer. The Adam Lance, from Sandy Hook, from the mass shooting there, and Wade Michael Page from Oak Creek, James Holmes from Aurora, Colorado, killed 12 people, 58 injured in the cinema. We all remember that. The Tucson, Arizona, Jared Lee Lohner, the officers across the United States that have already killed 136 black males this year. This year, 136 already shot by police. We have an ultra-militarized police force. I mean, look, the guys look like they're going into Afghanistan, and they're in downtown Nashville, where I'm at, or they're wherever, in some small little town, and they are armed to the teeth. We're putting more and more money into militarizing our police, and we're putting more and more time into justifying why we have to. Oh, well, there's more violence, so we need to amp up the ammo. We need to amp up the gear and make everybody look like RoboCop. That's one way to address the situation. However, we see that that's just cyclical. It just keeps feeding and feeding and feeding. It's self-perpetuating. So we have to understand that at the end of the day, if we look at all these things that are accumulating, all these maladies and let's just say the United States for right now, we have 109,000. What is that? No, it's 109,631,000 welfare recipients in the United States versus 105. That's less than 109,862,000 full-time employees in the United States. So we have more people on welfare than we do in full-time employment in the United States. Holy crap. I mean, this is supposed to be the home of the free and the land of the brave, all that. This is the land of entrepreneurialism and free enterprise and so on and so on. And we have more people on welfare than we do in full-time jobs. Now, granted, we also have entrepreneurs and so on, and that evens out. But at the end of the day, we have 109 million people that are on welfare. That exists. That's happening right now. Now we got Michael Xavier Johnson, the shooter in Dallas, and we say, oh, well, this black guy that just got pissed off because of all the stuff that's happening to black folks in America. Sure, you could look at it that way, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. Not to mention that he was working for the U.S. military as a military officer. He was trained as a killer. We trained him. We pissed him off. This country said, hey, here's a marginalized situation for your race. Here's how to kill. Sort it out. And then we're shocked when someone like that comes out and does what he did. Tragic as it was, and it was, no less tragic when one person, a black person or a cop or whatever, it's a person. And it's a person that died, that didn't have to, that shouldn't have had to. I won't get into the terrorism discussion. I'll leave that for another talk. But terrorism is made, I would say, largely by Americans, by American government. We have, we say, oh, we got to fight this and fight that and fight that. And we go into other countries and we take what we want and we rip things up and we blow things up and everything else. And then a terrorist comes over here and does something. They go, oh, terrorist, that came out of nowhere. No, it didn't. It didn't come out of nowhere. Every action has a reaction. We don't need to get into all the details. But at the end of the day, these things are a reaction to things that have been in place for a long time. I mean, our country, the United States of America, was built on the land stolen from Native Americans. Just in North America alone, if you rule out, Canada and all of South America, where there was more Indians than there were here in North America, 19 million died in that genocide, of which we don't even call it genocide. It's certainly not written that way in our history books. We have Thanksgiving and turkey. At some point, America has to stop, collectively, of course, and certainly the influential, has to stop and take responsibility for what we have created. These things are made in America. And we talk about, why do we have so much gun violence? Why do we have so much, theft and so on and so on. We look at just gun violence, for instance. Obviously, that's a big one for me. But last year, the NRA spent over $28 million on lobbying for gun rights. That's only one of the lobbyists for gun rights. $28 million was spent just to lobby for gun rights. That was built on the Second Amendment, which, don't get me started on the Second Amendment, but it's such a ridiculous thing. I'm going to read it. The Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you break that down, what we're looking at is a regulated militia. I don't recall seeing a lot of regulated militias around here, nor do I see them fighting for a free state necessarily. Now, you can leave that up to interpretation, I guess. But at the end of the day, the Second Amendment that everyone talks about is saying that we have the right to a well-regulated militia that is protecting a free state. And then we just say, it means the right to bear arms. I mean, you could say that. At the end of the day, we seem to be perplexed as to why there's so much violence going on, yet we arm everyone. There's over 357 million civilian-owned firearms in the United States alone. There's only 317 million citizens. 92 people are killed in the U.S. with a gun every single day. Let it sit in. 92 people. What if there were fewer guns? Might be fewer than 92 people dying per day from guns. I mean, I don't understand why it's such a difficult math problem here. We can't figure it out. We're pretty smart people. I think it's just it's a reflection of our values and our priorities. And at the end of the day, our perspective forms our truths and beliefs and desires and motivations, and ultimately our values. What do we value most? And you can look at a country like Bhutan and see, it's all 60-some percent protected land and whatever. Pretty easy to see what they value. Go to Costa Rica. I just lived there for a year and a half. You live there, and it's all pura vida, pure life, and so on. And everybody has this peace about them, and it's a demilitarized country. Over 56 years ago, they demilitarized. What do they value? Peace, it appears. You don't see a lot of people walking around with guns. You don't even hardly notice the police that are around there, and they're quiet, and they're nice, and whatever. All of these things are happening there, or that environment is in existence there. It's easy to see what they value. You come here in the United States and you read the headlines, you see what's going on, you see the amount of guns everywhere, and so on. What do we value? Why do you have a gun? You have a gun for the false sense of security, I think, but mostly just to feel powerful, to feel like you have control over your life or the protection of someone or whatever. That's why you have a gun. We'll have the hunting discussion some other time, but for right now, for security, protection purposes, that's what we're looking at. So, what do we value most here in the United States? Control. At the end of the day, that control that lust for control has created things. It's created environments. It's created statistics that are crappy. It's created a lot of animosity. It's created a bubbling of hatred and violence and all these kind of things that we see happening around here right now in the headlines, like we see with the Orlando shooting and now the Dallas thing, and then we've got both of the Philando and Alton Sterling. When does it end? I mean, we're having them back to back, like days on end now, and everybody's still shocked. Why is this happening? Oh, it must be the black folks. I'm like, for God's sake, at some point, somebody's got to realize that we're creating this. This is crafted. This is made in America. This is a product of the United States. At the end of the day, I think that what perpetuates that most, and as is articulated very eloquently by Martin Luther King in many different ways that he said it, it's our apathy. And I would say at this point, it's black community and white community. It often gets pinned on the white community, and I certainly think it's most responsible there. But there's a lot of the black community that I know that's not getting involved either. They're not trying to ruffle any feathers. They're already got enough oppression going on. They're not trying to get into the mix. And fair enough. If anybody's most responsible, it's the white community. But collectively, we've got to take responsibility. And that represents the masses. Those people, those groups of apathetic people represent the masses. So if the masses started to change their opinion and started to actually get involved and actually stand up for something, I'm not saying anything even drastic, but do something small. And when you get that in numbers, it equates to something very large, a movement, a resistance. And I think that's what we're looking for at this point, is a resistance. I mean, the violence in America, in the United States, is a result of the perspective that is rooted in fear. And it's sponsored by our media and protected by those that believe that a gun is a weapon of peace or a tool for peace, which is laughable if it weren't so tragic. Getting heated up. And we should all get heated up. We should be having discussions about this, not just on Facebook. I assume that helps to some degree, and I engage from time to time. But at the end of the day, we've got to be doing something more. We have to stop fueling environments that create sociopathic, insane behavior. We've got to focus on some sort of moral compass for the country. And I'm not just talking about religious. I'm talking about actual people-centered, like taking care of society. We're making these things. And at some point, we have to stop making those products and start making something else. We need a perspective shift. At this point, we have a choice. We can get more angry. We can blame it on Islam if it's Orlando. We can blame it on the black community. If it's the shooting in Dallas, we can blame it on all kinds of things. But at some point, we have to take responsibility. We have to step outside of our apathy and get uncomfortable enough and say, okay, well, this is now more uncomfortable than actually getting off our asses and doing something about it. So we have to choose. And we have to choose oneness. We have to choose that over division. We have to choose to understand that we are interconnected, that we are all human. And we have to start treating people like humans again, instead of statistics or that community or that community. It's going to require patience. When we go off and we have some big violent, thrashing in the streets and protesting and whatever, that's not being patient. That's just being pissed off. And I can certainly relate. But going and doing some sit-in or something peaceful, a nonviolent resistance or whatever, that requires patience. That's effective. Use that, please. Don't fight violence with violence. You can say all of the little sayings or whatever, you know what they are, but we have to we have to foster a community that's more concerned with unity than control, peace than control. At the end of the day, all of our economics kind of comes down to control, a desire to control. And ultimately, we have to value love enough to let it supersede the fear that has been systematically programmed into our minds. That love has to overcome it. Rather than fighting the fear, I say focus on love. Let that be your guide. In every moment, no matter the circumstances, if we were all out there committed to being a vessel of love, this could change. I hope you're thriving. I hope you're not getting too pissed off, but I hope that you're getting engaged and that you care enough to do something, to say something, to at least resist a certain type of behavior, resist a certain type of environment. and to be love. I wish you strength and peace as you evolve into love.